All right, let's talk about something that happened at New Japan, and it is
Mhm.
also, Cena's retiring, which is why this run is even more meaningful, kind of going out in a great way. Another person who's going out in a great way is Hiroshi Tanahashi, and there was so much conversation about who should be the guy for his retirement match. Should it be Naito? Should it be Okada? Should it be Nakamura? And, I think we were all intrigued by Nakamura, and we were also in not only just by the match because they haven't wrestled in a long time, and it would actually be fun to see what Nakamura is today outside of WWE, WWE style. But I also think some of the intrigue was about the messiness of that situation.
Yeah.
How would Tony Khan deal with having a WWE wrestler working with his number one partner? Like, that was a lot of the intrigue. It was almost like some fans wanted to see it happen just because they knew it would bother Tony. Like, I do think that some of it was that. Um, and I thought it would be cool because it's kind of the true forbidden door. Like, if you're really
Mhm.
trying to create that, like, anything can happen thing, Nakamura is the guy because of the being in WWE and having AEW on this show. But at the same time, like, Tony Khan is their top partner. Um, and then when it happened and when Okada came out, I thought, you know what? When I saw those two guys in the ring together, I was like, okay, it may not be the craziest of intrigue because these guys, I saw them wrestle like 2 years ago, I think,
Yeah, I
in
think
San
you saw
Jose.
their last match, right?
Yeah, which was really good.
Mhm.
It wasn't the same match from like the mid 2010s for sure, but it was still really good. But then if you take away the uniqueness of the Nakamura match, I think that's the right match because you saw them in the ring together, and all of a sudden, like, memories just kind of came back to me and they kind of flooded back. And it's like, okay, this is why I really fell in love with New Japan Pro Wrestling. This feud, the idea that Okada just couldn't beat this dude, and it time and time again, and finally he conquered him, and he became the top guy. And then Tanahashi came back and had to beat Kenny Omega to reclaim status, like at that Wrestle Kingdom 2019 or 2018 or whatever that was. Like, there's so like all those memories came flooding back to me, and I thought, you know what? Romanticism wins here, but this is actually the right match for Tanahashi's story. The Nakamura one would have been the most intriguing. It would have been the most like forbidden doorish. But to tell this story, I think the Okada one is the right one.
So I agree with most of everything you said there. The only thing I would say when you talk about being right for the story, I actually think that right for the story also would have been Nakamura, and the reason being that him and either Nakamura or Shibata, and because they came up together as the new Three Musketeers,
Mm-hmm.
and they were, and specifically Nakamura and Tanahashi were competing to be that next guy, and Tanahashi pulled ahead of him, and then they tried pushing. Nakamura was a champion in really down times. He tried MMA. People forget, like, he had matched with Brock, back in New Japan, and so it was like Nakamura never quite hit the level that Tanahashi did, and then Nakamura just cashed out in 2016 and went to WWE. I mean, they had 15 years together, but so for me, like, as somebody who's followed that scene for a long time, I feel like Okada and Tanahashi was played out. And that said, I mean, I do feel the same nostalgia for that match as you do. I went into it thinking, if we get Okada or Tanahashi or Omega, those were the three that I wanted. One of those three. And if we got any one of those three, I'd have been happy. So I'm happy with Okada, don't get me wrong. But I would just say, like, for the story, and especially the story that Tanahashi was telling, because he says we're going to go back to the original. And I wonder when he made that comment if he thought it was going to be Shibata. or he wanted to be Shibata, and then for whatever reason, like they just didn't. Like I think that New Japan won't let Shibata work, and that may be out of Tanahashi's hands
Mm-hmm.
because of what he pulled. A couple of years ago when he was supposed to come in and do a grappling match, and he ended up having a regular full-fledged match.
Yeah.
And then they did an exhibition match last year at the Dome and beat the shit out of each other, him and Tanahashi, for 5 minutes, which was awesome. Like it was unbelievable. But yeah, so I would say, like, for me, I'm perfectly happy with Okada. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, the Nakamura thing couldn't work. I'm like, I just felt like they could have made this work. Like, uh, really, like TKO has nothing to lose by letting Nakamura do this match. Like, it's going to get him extra exposure. It's not going to hurt them at all. It's going to make them look like, oh, we're the generous people letting our guy go do the show.
Okay, can I tell
Tony,
you? Can I tell you why they maybe not want him to do it?
uh, sure.
Let's say he gets over in a crazy way, and
Oh yeah, okay.
let's say he wants to go back to Japan.
Let him go. Like they're not using them.
I know, but
Like,
that is not how they do business, right? They're not going to
yeah.
create stars in other companies.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and that could be it. And then with Tony, like, I mean, for him, like, what does he care? Like it's fan service. So he looks like the bigger guy for giving his blessing if they let it happen. And then New Japan, obviously, they'd be more than happy to have Nakamura. So the thing
I
is,
think he would want his partners though
yeah,
to have his back, right? Because WWE and TKO are actively trolling this dude and actively trying to ruin his shows, right? Like they are competing against him very specifically to ruin what he can do. And so if you are New Japan and you are actually entertaining the idea, Tony probably feels a little way about that. Um, if New Japan came to him and was like, "Hey, we got your back. We're doing this one thing. F them." Maybe he feels differently, but I don't know. It's just a tough one, especially when you have the partners in this wrestling war.
if you go back 4 or 5 months, maybe even longer, when we were first starting to speculate, okay, who's the last opponent going to be, I saw a lot of people throwing out the name of Okada. And a lot of people that follow the New Japan scene super closely, Jeremy, on
Mm-hmm.
New Speaking of Strong Style being one of them, just shot it down immediately. And I know Chris Sampson, I think, was another one that said, no, there's no way. Okada's not going to be coming back. It's too soon. Tony's not going to let him do it. It just doesn't make any business sense. Like they were saying that. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe they had the Nakamura thing out there to kind of make it so that, oh, well, if you don't give us Okada, we'll go get Nakamura. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, so maybe having the possibility of having Nakamura there, I'm trying to think of the word, it lightened Tony's heart, like kind of thing. Like, okay, maybe I'll let Okada do it, or maybe even Okada wanted to do it. And maybe it was him that didn't want to go to Japan. Like, I don't know the reason why they were so adamant it wasn't going to be Okada, because that was the first name that people wanted. Um, the name I would want in a
Hmm.
perfect world where there was no politics or anything.
Oh, you would
What?
want Cena.
Obvious. Cena and Tanahashi. That'd be so awesome on January 4th. Like, oh my God. Like, in the dome. Like it never happened, but that would be the best.
The one thing that I will be very vocal about my frustration, and they're kind of teasing it in the story, is that it's not New Japan Okada that is actually going to face Tanahashi. It's AEW
Yeah.
Okada. And he has to be the main event because Takeshita, there's no way that Takeshita is the main event over him.
No, there
And
can't be.
no, but that's his storyline. In this retirement match, that is Okada's storyline. So if this Okada and Tanahashi match becomes more about Okada Takeshita than it is Okada Tanahashi, I'm going to be really frustrated.
And it might be, like, especially if Tony has any, I imagine he's got some say in the creative. Although he's probably not going to overrule Tanahashi, like being that Tanahashi is the president. Tanahashi probably wants to lose. And that's the other thing. Like, if Tony is involved at all in the creative of this, Okada and Takeshita are both winning. But what makes sense business wise is Yota Tsuji to be beaten to Takeshita.
I wouldn't be surprised if Takeshita won, by the way. Not that I would be surprised. I would find it a little odd. But look, if it's only because I don't sense that Takeshita is super over with that audience. So if he
No,
wins,
no, no.
it would be kind of as a little bit of as a heel, and the idea would then be for who is going to beat him and who's going to be, from the New Japan side. Even though he is working for them for sure, but they don't see him as like a homegrown guy. I don't think.
I wonder if one other thing I was thinking about is if the concession that Tony, like, okay, Tony concedes, okay, I'm going to let Okada, do this match. As what I want in return is I want the first Okada to catch the match, and I want it in AEW. Although no, actually no, well, yeah, because Takeshita is the world champion, New Japan's gonna be protective of that. So either he's gonna beat Takeshita as New Japan as IWGP champion, possibly in the C2, or they're gonna wait until he loses the belt and then they'll have the match. But it could also be, yeah, it could be that maybe he wants to beat Takeshita while he's IWGP champion, and the concession is I'll let you have Okada for the Tokyo Dome. That
It'll be interesting to see these stories come out about how this
yeah.
thing
Yeah,
came
because we
came
were
to
hearing
fruition.
some pretty wild stuff about the relationship between New Japan and Tony Khan. Like, like some behind the scenes, really weird stuff.
I mean, to some extent, Tony has all their guys, and that's part of the reason why they're not hot is
Yeah.
all those guys were going to leave anyways because of the just how bad business is.
Yeah,
They
and the
weren't going to
yen,
stay there,
the
but
the yen being down, and yeah.
just that easy transition to AEW, and now
They
Tony's
they
got all
don't
the guys.
they don't want Tony at that show. He might take a look at Yota Tsuji and say, "Yeah, I want this guy too.
Flashing the
I can
cash.
I can have my Japanese Roman."